am live. I'm reading The Last Barrier, a Sufi journey. I have already started. This is Reshad Feilds' story about Turkey, in Turkey. I'm in chapter 3 now, and I'm continuing. Suddenly Hamid stirred. I must take you home before dark. We walked silently along the beach back to the car, a chill wind at our backs. You've had such a long trip, you must be very tired. Tomorrow you will rest, and tomorrow night, when Wednesday is over, we will meet again and have a wonderful dinner in the town. It was a short drive to the house, which had been lent to Hamid by a friend of his who lived in Istanbul. The 2-floor house was built so that the rooms faced out over a courtyard on 3 sides. On the 4th, there was a high wall which afforded complete privacy. In the centre of the courtyard was a beautiful tree, whose branches hung down to the ground, similar to a willow. It was lit by lamps hanging in the branches, and around it were beds of flowers. The portion of the house opposite the door through which we entered the courtyard was more modern than the rest of the house and Japanese in style, being long and low and made of pine. There were 2 identical rooms, one on top of the other, with a short flight of wooden steps outside leading directly to the upstairs room. Downstairs the curtains were drawn, and I saw the flicker of a match as a candle was lit, and the shadow of a figure move across the window. That will be your room, the one upstairs, Hamid pointed. Come, and we will take your bags up together. The room was perfect. It was simple and clean, with a tiny shower built into a corner. There was a chest of drawers with a pitcher of water on it, a lamp beside the bed, and another on a table by the window. The table also held a bowl of flowers and a copy of the Quran in English. Don't keep the light on and the doors open, he warned. The mosquitoes here are quite voracious. I'm used to them, but you're fair, and they are particularly fond of European skin. Good night. With that, he left me, walking back across the patio to his quarters above the kitchen in the other house. I lay down on the bed and immediately fell asleep. I must have been more tired than I knew. I slept for 12 hours. The next morning I washed and then breakfasted on the bread, cheese and fruit that Hamid had set out for me. I spent that day quietly, sitting in my room or wandering in the garden. It was a dreamlike day. I was content, almost like a child, to drift from place to place, to look at a house, a fence, a heap of stones. I was not really aware of the passage of time. Once I glimpsed Hamid at the window of his room above the kitchen, but he did not seem to see me. After sundown he appeared, smiling. Take a shower, he said. There's water tonight. Then we will dine together. We walked a short distance down the street to the little restaurant in the square. It was the only one in Side. Obviously the village had been warned that a foreigner was coming to stay, for a table had been set overlooking the Mediterranean and a special menu had been prepared. The owner of the restaurant came to sit at our table, and soon we were joined by several of Hamid's friends. I suppose I had thought that on my first night in Side, Hamid and I would talk about my experiences on the journey. But after the first introductions, he and his friends spoke to one another in Turkish. I might as well not have been there at all. Food was brought, dish after dish, and carafes of rough Turkish wine. Once or twice I heard my name mentioned and hoped that I was about to be included. The conversation continued, however, while I looked out at the glistening water, ate what was given to me, and wondered what would happen next. Perhaps I had come on the wrong day, after all. I knew better than to interrupt, of course. I was sure that when the time was right, the conversation would come around to the things I wanted to discuss. In the meantime, though, I was growing impatient. My mind went back over the previous day, my arrival in Side, my new room and the one below it, the candle I had seen being lit in the window. I became aware of a growing sense of dejection and loneliness, so intense that I was afraid that I would break down right there at the table. I struggled to regain my self-control, but I could not rid myself of a feeling of great pain, which grew stronger as I saw a figure walking across the square towards us. At first I could not make out the features, and then I saw it was a beautiful woman, tall and dark. Her black hair hung below her shoulders. She wore a long white dress, her feet were bare, and in her hands she held a tangled mess of blue wool, which was twisted around her wrists so tightly that her hands and arms, which she held out in front of her, were bound together. The owner of the restaurant got up quickly and fetched her a chair. Hamid led her to the table, gently unravelled the wool from her wrists and poured her a glass of wine. She was beautiful, so delicate and ethereal that she seemed hardly of this world. I realized that the sense of loneliness I felt was emanating from her. The woman bowed her head very slightly as Hamid introduced us. She did not speak, but again picked up the blue wool and started to fumble with it. Her hands moved slowly and carefully at first, her fingers searching through the tangled mess. Then they became agitated, frantically plunging into the blue of the wool. Hamid spoke to me, though his eyes never left the young woman. "She's looking for the end," he said. I held out my hand to try to help her, but she touched my arm, signaling that I was to leave her alone. Presently he bid good night to the others at the table, motioned me to follow, and led the woman across the starlit square. We walked silently together along the shore back to the house. Just before we reached the house, she turned and stood for a moment looking out to the sea. I could just make out a loop of wool trailing down beside her. Then she turned and went through the door. Hamid and I watched her cross the courtyard, and then the light of a candle appeared in the window of the room below mine, glowing through the mosquito netting, faintly lightening the tree by the stairs. Hamid turned to me. "Come to my room tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, he said. Then he embraced me, kissing my hands and putting them to his forehead, and walked towards his room. That was the end of chapter 3. Today is the 5th of June, 2025.